So for the first period this afternoon, we are mainly going to be meditating. So first of all, we'll do some meditation around the practice of going for refuge. Some people translate this as taking a safe direction in life, which sounds very different from going for refuge, perhaps. I think it's like this. Like when you think about the suffering of psychic existence in general, and especially of the lower realms, of oneself and others, then you know that you have to do something. And you also know that you need help. You know you want to do something about this, and you need some help. So who do you turn to? So here we have the idea of turning to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. When you're hungry, you might turn to food. When you've got a headache, you might turn to the aspirin. But when the problem is psychic existence in the lower realms, you need something a bit stronger, so you turn to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So first of all, think about suffering in the lower realms. And they talk in the text about thinking about the lower realms in order to bring up a sense of fear, which Rinpoche calls useful fear. And there are useful fears and useless fears. You need fear. Sometimes you need fear. Without the fear, then there's a risk that you won't survive, just in ordinary life. So here also, without the fear, you're not going to you're not going to be looking around to see who you can turn to solve this problem, because it doesn't concern you. So thinking about suffering of the lower realms with the thought that I've created all the causes to be there, to be born there. I'm going to die eventually, and then that's where I'm going to have to go, most likely. If I'm born there, the suffering will be unbearable, whether I'm born as a hell being or as a predator or as an animal. So try to generate a heartfelt feeling of fear. The fear that's going to make you act and do something about it. even if we're not born in any of the three lower realms and we're born as a human being or as a god, still there is so much suffering. As a human being, it's very obvious that our lives we're constantly beset by problems, one kind of problem after the other, physical problems, mental problems. Getting older and the body kind of disintegrating, and then we have to die. And then the gods that have all those long lives filled with pleasure, and then they say that the last week, their mental suffering, when they see that their life is just about to come to an end. They have 1 week left, and that's 1 week left to live, and that's not one of our weeks. That's a week in the God realm, which would be like hundreds of years. If you think about the lowest level of the desire realm gods, then one of their days is 50 human years. They see their lives coming to an end, their powers are diminishing, and they see where they're going to be born. That they're going to fall from that position. And the mental suffering is unbearable because of that. And even those that don't have that kind of physical pain, being in a sense just distracted by the pleasure, or even those who don't have pleasure and just have neutral feelings all the time, neutral sensations, then there's the distraction, being distracted by concentration, distracted from what really counts, which is achieving liberation and enlightenment. So that's also unbearable. No matter where one is born in psychic existence, one's still not beyond suffering. And anything good is going to eventually turn into the suffering of the lower realms for a long, long time. So try to generate an intense feeling of fear of all of psychic existence, not just the lower realms, all of psychic existence. Recognizing that this is not just something to think about as an observer. This is going to happen to me. This is where I am. This is my situation now. Here's one way of looking at it. As long as one is in psychic existence, if you find thinking of the other realms of existence besides the human existence difficult to think about, so think of the worst thing you can imagine happening. Maybe it's your own favorite nightmare. The worst thing you can imagine happening, the thing that just thinking about just brings you out in a cold sweat. It could be being buried alive, for example, which does happen. Sometimes by accident, people think you're dead. You're not actually. So then you're put inside the coffin and you're buried. And you revive in that. So that your worst nightmare is going to happen again and again and again unless you become free of psychic existence. Maybe the worst thing you can imagine happening is losing somebody dear to you, your partner, a child. Well, even if that doesn't happen in this life, it will happen. And it's going to happen again and again. As long as one does not escape from psychic existence. then that's not all. That's bad enough, but that's not all. On top of that, it's not just me, there are countless other beings in exactly the same position, in the sense of being stuck and drowning in psychic existence. Of course, we have these opportunities that many other sentient beings don't have, but still we are all in this situation of being stuck here in psychic existence, so difficult to escape from. All my kind mothers, the source of all happiness. All of these beings also have not escaped from and are stuck inside this cycle of the suffering of the lower realms, and then occasionally being born in other places in psychic existence where there's still suffering and one is still not free of suffering. So in this way try to generate compassion for all the kind mother sentient beings who are subject to the fear, the danger of being born in the lower realms, who are right there at this moment, and in the other places of psychic existence, not free of psychic existence. So we'll stop there for a few moments. Afternoon session. So yeah, it sort of really involves having approaching the whole idea from a slightly different point of view that also gives you, makes it easier to go about this analysis of all our worldly pleasures in terms of being suffering of change and that kind of thing. So it's something that I was talking with Venerable Renee about afterwards, and we sort of came up with this idea. The idea came up that so you have a different, it's a slightly different way of looking at it, as I said. So for example, particularly those things where it's not obvious at all to us that this is suffering of any kind. Because we talk about suffering of change, that there's anything wrong with it. It seems like it's just something so wholesome. The point is that even though it seems, when you look at the Buddhist cultures, it's not like they reject art and so forth. It seems to be a very important part of it's sort of, yeah, I mean, it's something that's very important for the well-being of human beings, is to have that kind of in their lives. But so here's a way of looking at it, although it might be something important, there's nothing ultimate about it. In other words, let me start again. I think it's particularly when you find that, when you've recognized that somehow you've become obsessed, then you really need to do something about it, don't you? And then you really need to see, look, where's this getting me, How is this helping me in finding the ultimate happiness? And this is where it's really connected with refuge too, because, we did our meditation there on the suffering of the lower realms and psychic existence. Then when we look at this idea of faith in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it's very much, what's really integral to that in terms of really understanding the reality of refuge is the truth of cessation, is wholeness. I think it says, how does it go? Something like, real Buddhist refuge is very much founded on the understanding of the possibility of the truth of cessation. So, where's that going to get me as far as achieving the truth of cessation, actualizing, making it a reality is concerned? So, I'm not going to say, I shouldn't say maybe, it plays a role, but there's nothing ultimate about it. So it's like you want to keep things in their place. I mean, after all, let's look at it this way. You could spend your whole life just concerned with cultural things, going to Rome and Florence to see the beautiful things there, and Paris and London, and I guess you've got some things in the States as well. And the case that was brought up, the art galleries, but then there's also like the music and so on, and you could really it looks quite it's probably a little bit like God realm kind of thing, just enjoyment, just a beautiful life. But at the end of it, what do you have? It's like we have this the example from the diamond cutter, like a flash of lightning, So you spend your whole time like that, and then the moment comes to die, and it's like, I really feel that this is true, that you will feel. So it happened, now it's over, and what did I get from it? Is that going to bring you some kind of assurance and security in knowing that what's going to happen afterwards, as you go on to your next life, is going to be good? I mean, if you haven't been using your time, at least trying to make that truth of cessation, nirvana, or liberation, a reality, then what's going to happen, It's like the life has passed by and you enjoyed yourself, but you didn't really do anything on any kind of like ultimate level, any kind of profound level. So keeping things in their place with that kind of way of thinking, it's okay, it's a part of my life that seems to make things whole, but there's nothing ultimate about it. Yes.
I think sometimes these things are supports for us. It's like a symbolic thing. And in fact, I was reminded from that because I was a bit disturbed about what you were saying. And in page 60 of the prayer book, it says, as enjoyments of the six senses, they function to generate the special transcendental wisdom of bliss and voidness. So I think things can be very symbolic and can nurture us in that way. But of course, we focus. But you know, the tankers and the icons and things are reminders of the transcendental wisdom, I think, and things like that.
You could say that, or you could say that if that's your outlook on life, then they will be reminders of that.
Yes.
But obviously, they're not reminders of that for everybody, are they, in the world?
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
So, I mean, for sure, somebody who, spends their life, traveling from one cultural event to another with the awareness that all of this is like an illusion, seems to be inherently existent, but it's not.
Reminder.
Appears to be something other than merely labeled. That kind of awareness.
Yeah.
Or, with their mind filled with thoughts of bodhicitta and compassion, or whatever it might be. Of course.
So as long as we
practice.
know that it's not just dismissing everything, that,
No.
It's to say that sometimes if you look at it clearly and try to see what's the meaning of it.
I think particularly for us, since we're more beginner levels. I mean, if we think about the great yogis, yogis and yoginis, they can do anything they like because everything is just practice. Now, for us, you need to be thinking, okay, it's all well and good to spend some time, put some energy into that kind of thing. But if that's the only thing, when am I going to sit down and meditate? Because for us, if we don't spend some time sitting and meditating, that kind of thing, it's just not going to work. I didn't catch that. Do you want to get the?
Sorry. We therefore don't dismiss the tankers, etc.
Oh no.
Yeah. No, but I mean that they are these. They are impermanent, and they are connected to the senses. But it's like seeing beyond it. What's the symbolism of it?
Because another question is, is it something that disturbs my mind or not? Yeah.
Does it nourish me? Does it nourish me on my path to ultimate reality? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's spend 5, 6, 7 minutes more meditating, and then we'll have a short break. So by thinking about the suffering of the lower realms and psychic existence, which one personally is subject to, and feeling that kind of fear. So to use some images that we've also heard from Rinpoche and the traditional sources, having thought about, this is very similar to meditating on the defects of psychic existence and renunciation and so on. So the kind of fear, which is, the fear that you're going to be thrown into a septic tank, or the fear that you would feel when you're actually in there is maybe more to the point. If you're in a septic tank right now, you wouldn't have, even for an instant, you wouldn't have the thought of it being nice and wanting to remain there. And they also talk about experiencing psychic existence, which it's not like I'm over here, psychic existence is over there. This is psychic existence. I am that, actually, right now. That's what I am at the moment. Experiencing it like a fiery pit, being in a fiery pit. Not like a fiery pit that you might fall into. You're sort of like teetering at the edge of, and you might fall into if you're not careful. It's one that you've already fallen into, so you're in there right now. Experiencing the whole of the samsaric life in that way. Then finding it unbearable that it's not just me, it's all the kind of other sentient beings. So then who do you turn to? Who can we turn to? We're in trouble. And who can we turn to? So in a way, if you're going to ask that question sincerely and not just go through the formula where you're thinking, who do I turn to? Nobody else can really help except the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. They're the ones I have to turn to. If you really wanted to find out the answer for yourself, then to be able to search and find who it is that you're going to turn to, you've really got to know what the problem is. So of course here we're saying being stuck in psychic existence and the lower realms. But where do we get this idea that it would be the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha that would help us to solve that? So I think being aware that it's not just that we're stuck in psychic existence, where we're subject to all the suffering of psychic existence in general and especially the lower realms. It's knowing why that is. In other words, it's to do with understanding that the root of all that is ignorance. I mean, you could say that in a way, seeing the suffering nature of psychic existence means, above all, understanding the pervasive compounding suffering. And really to be able to see the pervasive compounding suffering means to understand the reality of emptiness and the way in which ignorance, which is the mind that grasps things as being the opposite of empty, as being inherently existing from their own side, existing without being merely labeled, that mind is the very root of all of that, all of those problems, all of that suffering. Because then it's like, when you know your illness is cancer, you're going to go to a doctor who's a specialist in that. You're looking for somebody who can cure that. It's much easier to look for somebody who's going to cure you of your illness when you know what kind of illness it is already, to some degree. So we need some. So yeah, if you've understood that the ignorance is the root of all that, then you need to look for somebody. Who do you turn to? Somebody who's going to help you out of that ignorance. So please try to, we'll have a short break, maybe 10 minutes. Please don't talk during the break, and try to maintain mindfulness of being stuck in psychic existence, like immersed in psychic existence right now, along with all the kind Mother Sentient beings. Like being in a septic tank. Try to experience it like that. Try to be mindful of that. With the refuge, then, so the question is, who do we turn to? So there are different reasons for explaining why we would turn to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, which generally means the one who teaches the way, that's the Buddha, the way itself, the Dharma, and those who are practicing that way in order to achieve that final result of liberation and enlightenment, which is the Sangha. So why the Buddha is a suitable object of refuge, someone that one can turn to, is because of having the power, the wisdom and compassion to help. The wisdom, which means knowing what we need. The compassion, meaning not just knowing, but wanting, being committed to helping. And then the power, actually having the ability to help. So think about how the Buddha is a worthy object of refuge, somebody that we can really turn to solve this problem, because of that reason, because of having the power, because of having the wisdom, and because of having the compassion. another way of looking at it is because of having directly realized the deep nature of reality, that everything is empty, and then continue to meditate on that so that all of the obscurations in the mind get completely purified. So one has the capacity to be aware of everything all at once. So that means that the Buddha knows everything that we could possibly need to find out about in terms of how to practice the path. And because of having, right from the very beginning, only thought of all of the sentient beings, including ourselves, having made the decision to strive for enlightenment for our sake, right at the beginning of the path, and then having practiced for so many millions and billions and actually trillions of years, again, just for our sakes. So then, once they achieve enlightenment, once a Buddha finally achieves enlightenment, then there is nothing else that they're going to do but try to benefit others. So that's where the compassion comes in. Their only concern is helping us. So therefore the teachings of such a being and the practices expressed by those words are also a valid refuge. The Dharma is also a valid refuge. Particularly that's talking about the truth of the path, the direct realization of emptiness, and the truth of cessation, which is the freedom from the obscurations, different levels of the obscurations. And for that reason, also those people who have that kind of experience, that direct experience, which is really quite inconceivable, and are practicing on the path, they are worthy objects of refuge because we can look at them to see how we should practice. So in this way, try to generate faith in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, in their ability to free oneself, or to help us to be free, oneself and all sentient beings, from all forms of suffering, and to achieve the perfect happiness of complete enlightenment. on the basis of that fear and faith in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Reason-based faith in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha's ability to free oneself and all sentient beings from that suffering and to lead one to enlightenment. We go for refuge, reciting the words that you find on page 25. Remembering that the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha are none other than one's guru, and thinking of the meaning as one recites the words. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. There was somebody down here, if you can wait for the... Oh, okay.
I'm trying to give an explanation. There is, for example, he's a psychologist, so I use Jung, Jung made an introduction to the I Ching, explaining that, events in the subtle impermanence, there are seeds that we don't see because we only see the gross impermanence. So the Buddha sees the seeds of an event that happens in the future because of this awareness. And this is how clairvoyance works. I think I read.
So a bit like, when you see, you can see the seeds of a certain kind of plant or grain, crop. You know what it's going to lead to, kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So then he sees the karma of a being of the past. Yeah. Infinite lives. Even the arhats, they don't see, that old man came and the arhat said he has no chance, to practice Dharma, but the Buddha said no and put
Your wife has already told us about this one, by the way. Huh? Your wife already told us about that one.
No. Why? Yes. Why she has experience?
Yeah, a couple of days ago we had the fly going around the stupa.
All right, okay.
It's the same one, isn't it?
Oh no, I didn't know that. It's maybe some kind of mental, connection. So I think there are yogis, clairvoyants. I think the Mo's are working in the same way, isn't it?
I don't know how Mo's work.
Well, the Mo's are very important for FPMT, right?
Yeah, it's true. Okay. But I mean, I don't know if anybody here knows how they work.
Well,
there's quite a few of us that thinks that Rinpoche does this, but it's really, he's just, he works it out for himself. People have maybe got more faith in Mo's than the Lama's mind. I don't know. Yeah.
The ability to see the 3 times is part of the quality of the Buddha's omniscient mind. Because time itself is void of self-existence, therefore the Buddha is not obstructed in seeing all 3 times. Also, he knows all karma and the seeds of all karma. And seeing that proclivity of beings, he can easily see the future and see what it will lead them to. That doesn't mean we don't have free will, but as long as our free will is still contaminated, it's very predictable.
Okay. Thank you. Something about something else? How about this? Something I was thinking about. It's not my own. It's not my own sort of. It's a question. It's not my own question. It's a question that Genjama Techok asked us once, and it's actually not got that much to do with what we've just been talking about. When we're doing the Okay, so I don't know if I can do it as well as he did anyway. So the fact that things are empty doesn't affect their the way in which they conventionally exist, does it? Right? So conventionally, the way things conventionally exist goes hand in hand with emptiness. So you hear these arguments that or this point that's made that the meditation on emptiness, even the Arya's meditation on emptiness, doesn't destroy conventional truths, right? Right. So meditation on emptiness doesn't destroy things. It actually doesn't affect things, does it at all? Meditating on the emptiness of the books on my table doesn't affect the books. It's just a question of understanding the nature of the book, isn't it? So when we purify, meditating on emptiness is supposedly a very powerful tool for, like destroying, cutting through the negative karma and making sure that you don't have to experience the suffering result of the negative karma. So it's very powerful for purifying, isn't it? So now, how do we use meditation on emptiness to purify our karma, right? To destroy those seeds. Usually the way that we do it is by meditating on the emptiness of the three spheres, so the oneself, the one that created the karma, the action of creating karma itself, and the object of the karma, the object of that action. So how is it that since meditating on the emptiness of something doesn't affect it one way or the other, how is it that meditating on the emptiness of the karma affects the karma? That's the question. So the question that's come up from the floor is: does it affect the karma, or is it the karma that gets affected by meditation on emptiness, or is it the mind? Well, what does anybody else think? Since meditating on the emptiness of something doesn't affect the object you're meditating on, how is it that meditating on the emptiness of karma purifies the karma?
I can try. When you see when you eradicate completely ignorance and the cause of ignorance, you don't create karma anymore, right?
If you eradicate
ignorance and the subtle ignorance too, all the.
In other words, if you eradicate ignorance completely.
Yeah. And what is the way to eradicate ignorance? Meditation on emptiness. So this is why.
That's true. But isn't that that's not really to do with how meditating on the karma? Because right now, why do we do this general confession? Why does Rinpoche want us to meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres of each of the categories of negative karma in order to purify it right now? Of course, completely purifying it means you're not going to experience any of the four results. A partial purification, where the purification isn't very strong for one reason or another, is going to weaken it so that maybe it becomes a shorter experience, less painful experience and so on. But anyway, right now, without talking about eradicating ignorance, which is a long time in the future, because that's only what I know when you become an Arya, maybe when you become completely free of psychic existence, you've totally eradicated it. Even right now, well before that, if you meditate on emptiness, it purifies a karma. And I wanted to go back to Anand's question over here, and because I wanted to see what anybody thought about what she said. That it was the way that you put it was as a question. Does it purify does it affect the karma, or does it affect the mind? So, does meditating on emptiness affect karma? Does it affect karma? Does anybody know? Does anybody have an idea? An answer? Yes? Oh, no. Okay. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah, no problem. That's how we answer questions sometimes, isn't it? By asking other questions.
So, when you say karma, you're referring to karmic seeds?
Well, when we talk about purifying karma, really, yeah, what we're doing is purifying the karmic seeds, isn't it?
So, what is a karmic seed? What are we considering to be the definition? Is it mind? Is it non-associated compositional factor? What is it? So we can be clear about what we're talking about.
Yes. Okay, so maybe you are, maybe you aren't really talking about the seed. But we do talk about purifying negative karma, don't we? I mean, it's true, isn't it? That I'm not just imagining that. We talk about purifying negative karma. How do you... So, excuse me? Yeah, well, what I'm trying to say is that what category of phenomena the seed belongs to is one question. The question that I'm really trying to ask is, can you purify the negative karma by meditating on the emptiness of the negative karma?
Yeah, but don't you have to know specifically what you're referring to when you use that phrase, negative karma?
I think to see how it purifies it, in a way, yes, but I still think that you can ask this simple question without getting complicated. Can you or can you not purify negative karma?
Yes.
I mean, I think Connie, what you would maybe be wanting to say is that, when we talk about purifying negative karma, what we're actually doing is destroying the seed, the potential for experiencing the result of that negative karma. But still, I mean, if we're all agreed that meditating on the emptiness of your negative karma purifies your negative karma, that negative karma is something that can be purified, and one of the most powerful ways of purifying it is by meditating on its emptiness, then that means we do accept that you can purify negative karma by meditating on its emptiness, right?
Yes,
Yes.
but you ask the question, how? How does meditating on emptiness purify the karma? That was your question.
Oh, sorry, I'd forgotten that.
And so I was having a difficulty figuring out how to answer a how question without understanding what exactly it is being purified.
Yeah.
So for that karmic result to occur, the negative karmic result to occur, it needs all the causes and conditions. So if you're actually working on the mental affliction that might arise with that negative karma, then that's going to affect whether that karmic result occurs or not. And that way you purify.
That's how you do it. So if you meditate on the emptiness of negative karma, does it affect the negative karma?
Yeah, it does.
It does. Okay. So that means that it's not true to say that meditating on the emptiness of a thing doesn't affect the thing. Because here, that now what we're saying is that when you meditate on emptiness of negative karma, it affects the negative karma. Okay, so that's one thing. Now let's go a little bit to what you were saying. Okay, let's say it's the seed that you're purifying. Now, actually, now in a way maybe it's getting even worse, because if what we're really doing is meditating on, well, when you meditate on wait a minute, when you meditate on the emptiness of negative karma, you're not meditating on the emptiness of the seed, are you?
Oh. No, you're meditating on you're meditating on the emptiness of the three spheres.
Yeah, emptiness of karma. It's actually a bit funny, really, because because karma really is the mental factor of intention, right? But when we say meditating on, when we say negative karma, we never think of the mental factor intention, do we? Like what we're thinking is, I don't know, like last night or yesterday I told a lie, and I want to purify that. So you meditated on the emptiness of the three spheres, and as part of your attempt to purifying that negative karma. What you mean when you say you want to purify the negative karma is you don't want to face the results. So you want to, and it's a fact, So what that means is that because the karma is over and done with, there's nothing you can do about that. It's over and done with. But what you're left with is the seed. So you want to do something to that seed so that it's sort of like deactivated, rendered, ineffective. And the way that you do it is by meditating on the emptiness of the karma. And in actual fact, we might think that what we're doing in the general confession is meditating on the emptiness of the karma, but it seems to me that what we're really doing is thinking about, as you said, the three spheres that were involved in that karma. We don't sit down and think about the mental factor intention, do we, most of the time? I mean, maybe we should be, because, of course, that mental factor intention, shi samba jo tadu, it's not even one of the when they talk about the basis, the attitude, the action, the completion, it's not actually one of those, is it? The mental factor intention. Yeah.
Isn't it part of motivation? Or at least.
Well, in the motivation, you've got the gunlong. So that's the actual intention to kill or steal or whatever it might be. Then the nyumong, the affliction. So it's either going to be done out of attachment or anger or ignorance. Usually they say that means they're ignorance of karma. And what's the other one? The dushe, so the discernment or recognition. But one of them isn't the mental factor intention, is it? So we usually don't involve ourselves in the mental factor intention itself. We involve ourselves. I don't know what everybody's doing when you think about the emptiness of the three spheres. I mean, usually at that point we say, meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres, which is the person, me, the one that did the negative action itself, and the object, so agent, action, object. Yes, please do, yeah.
Just on this point, I think the way I meditated, I think what I remember Rinpoche kind of leading is you meditate on the emptiness of the negative karma by seeing the agent, the person, the I who committed the action, the creating the negative karma and the negative karma being empty.
Yes, and yet I think that maybe it's a mistake, but wait a minute. So he says meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres.
Well, I just remember...
He says meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres, right? I mean, I didn't get... That's not my idea. I think Rinpoche usually says that, right?
Now, I just remember from previous times when Rinpoche was leading this general confession. Yeah. And I'm trying to look now in the prayer book, you know. I don't see it. But the way I remember it is like that.
Can you
Not
say it again?
the way you say, but the creator of negative karma, the action of creating negative karma, and the negative karma created. You know, that's the way I understand it.
Oh, yeah, well, that would also work. That would also work, yeah.
So, I don't know if it's the same or different. Because the negative karma created.
Itself, the person who created the karma and the action of creating the karma.
Yeah, and the karma created, you know.
Yes. So the karma created, the mental factor of intention created.
I don't know, the seed. I mean, the way I understand it.
I mean, really, you know, what you can do there in that case is just meditate on the emptiness of everything that's involved. You know, because like sometimes, like with stealing, there's two objects involved. You've got the person that you're stealing from and the thing that you stole from them. So I mean, like, you know, I did that thing. I'm empty. Doing that action, that was also empty. The other people involved, the objects involved, it's just all empty. Yeah.
Can you meditate on the dependent horizon of each one of those?
Yes,
and
yes,
how
yes.
that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Meditating on the dependent arising of those things in order to see that they're empty, because in actual fact they're dependent. The way they appear is independent. Yeah. Anyway, I still think that the question still is valid. You know, it's a reasonable question, since we do normally say that meditating on the emptiness of phenomenon doesn't destroy the phenomenon. So what about with negative karma? When you meditate on the emptiness of negative karma, does it affect the karma or not? If you meditate on the emptiness of the seed, does it affect the seed? Maybe that's something we can just think about. Yes. But still the question arises, you know, if we normally say meditation on emptiness doesn't affect the object you're meditating on, how come it does when you're meditating on the negative karma and or the seeds of karma or whatever? Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting question to ask, to see how this works. So, one last one.
I heard that, I asked the question once, if there is no storehouse consciousness, then where are karmic seeds stored? And it turns out the answer was they're somehow stored in the sense of I, in the concept I. That's where seeds are stored, in the I. And so reducing the I in that particular situation seems to reduce the power of the seed. And I don't know if the seed can be eliminated completely, right? Because there's stories of the Buddha having karmic seeds ripen as like a scratch when the actual karma was murdering a lot of people, you know. So then Lama Zopa has also said that karma is stored in the body in the form of energy, which probably explains why you're still experiencing karma even after you've achieved the first.
Well, some people say that Buddha showed the aspect, as we often say, or manifested experiencing the results of negative karma just as a lesson to people, that, you know, it's really, you really have to be careful. And the other thing you said about the storehouse consciousness and where the seeds are left, well, it's not the sense of I. As far as the Prasangika system is concerned, it's not, then the seeds of the karma and so on, they're not left on a sense of I. It's the mere I. And what the point of saying it's the mere I is really just to undermine any sense that there is a kind of like inherently existing mind that would be where they're stored. Because otherwise, really, it's the mental consciousness. I mean, it's still going to, even though the Prasangika say actually it's the mere I. This is just because they don't want to say there is an inherently existing person that's findable in the aggregates, and that's where the seeds would be. They do still say that it's the mental consciousness, because it's only the mental consciousness that actually survives death and goes on to the next life. It's actually the mental consciousness that bears those seeds. All right? Yeah, otherwise, I mean, this seems to be quite... I find it a little bit frustrating, actually. A lot of people are saying, instead of just I or I grasping or something, it's sense of I, and it's quite a vague term, sense of I, and it's sort of, I don't know, maybe it sort of seems to flow more, but I find it a little bit it throws up a fog on things rather than clarifying things. It's not a sense of I, it's the I, it's the mere I that bears the seeds of the karma and so on. Okay, so, well, let's stop there then. And first of all, let's dedicate. As a result of the virtuous karma we have created this afternoon, along with all of the virtue of oneself and others, of the past, present, and future, may the awakening mind be born in all beings where it has not been born yet. Where it's already been born, May it never decline and always increase. May the lives of the holy gurus be endlessly long. And may all of their wishes, without exception, immediately come true. The I, which is dedicating, and the action of dedicating, and the virtue dedicated are all completely empty of existing as they appear, totally empty of existing from their own side, inherently. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Okay. If I could get a few volunteers, even though we don't know yet what time Sojong is tomorrow, but I could use a few